The steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the sterile quiet of the hospital room, a cold comfort in the antiseptic air. I winced as I shifted against the starched sheets, the dull ache in my chest a constant reminder of why I was here. I was 72 years old, and my body had finally protested against the stress and the exhaustion. My hand, thin and papery, trembled slightly as I reached for the phone on the bedside table. My son, Mark, hadn't visited. Neither had his wife, Chloe. A small, cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. Then the screen lit up. It was a message from Chloe. A flicker of relief was instantly extinguished by the words on the screen. My breath caught in my throat. The message read, "Find another place to live, you useless freeloader." I read the words once, then twice, then a third time, the letters blurring through the sudden hot tears that welled in my eyes. Useless. Freeloader. The words echoed in the sterile silence, louder than the beeping monitor. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated blow, delivered at the very moment I was at my weakest, lying in a hospital bed after a mild heart attack. A heart attack brought on by the endless chores, the constant criticism, and the bone-deep weariness of being treated like an unpaid servant in my own home. My name is Evelyn Hayes. For the past 5 years, ever since my son Mark lost his job and I foolishly offered them a place to stay, I had become invisible. I was the live-in maid, the babysitter, the cook. I was the one who woke up at 5 a.m. to make their coffee, the one who scrubbed the floors while Chloe went out for manicures, the one who bit her tongue every time she made a passive-aggressive comment about the cost of groceries. "Evelyn, you really shouldn't have bought the name-brand milk. You know money is tight," she would say, tapping her $200 acrylic nails on the quartz countertop. The countertop I had paid for. I would just nod, my heart sinking, and look over at Mark. My son. He would just stare at his phone, refusing to meet my eyes, too weak or too cowed to defend the mother who had given him everything. The pain of Chloe's cruelty was sharp, but the pain of Mark's silence was a deeper, chronic ache. And now, this. Kicked out. Not just from a house, but from my home. The place I had built with my own 2 hands, with the love of my life. I turned my head to look out the hospital window, though the view was just a brick wall of the opposite wing. My mind drifted back, away from the smell of antiseptic and the cruel glow of the phone screen. I drifted back 40 years, to Richard. My Richard. Dr. Richard Hayes. He wasn't just a doctor, he was a brilliant visionary. We started with a small free clinic in the poorest part of the city. He had the genius, and I had the business sense. We worked side by side, pouring every cent we had, every ounce of our energy, into his dream. That small clinic grew. It became a hospital. And then it became this, the Hayes Hospital System, one of the most respected and largest private healthcare networks in the state. When Richard passed away 10 years ago, he left it all to me. I wasn't just a patient in this hospital. I was the chairwoman of the board, the sole owner. But I never wanted that life, not really. And I was so afraid of what that kind of wealth would do to Mark. I had seen it destroy other families. So I made a choice. I put a trusted board in place to run the day-to-day operations, and I stepped back. I kept my name, but I lived simply. I wanted Mark to find his own way, to build his own character, not just inherit one. I wanted him to be like his father. What a terrible mistake that had turned out to be. The house Chloe just kicked me out of wasn't their house. It was my house. It was the home Richard and I bought when Mark was just a boy, the home we'd filled with laughter and love. I let Mark and Chloe move in because they were struggling, because I wanted to help, because I loved my son. I thought living together would bring us closer. Instead, my generosity had been mistaken for weakness. My simplicity had been mistaken for poverty. They saw me not as their benefactor, but as their burden. They saw me as a useless freeloader. I looked back at the phone, the screen now dark. The tears had stopped. The shivering in my hands was replaced by a cold, still resolve. They thought I was a weak, old woman they could just throw away. They thought they could take my home, my dignity, and leave me with nothing. They had forgotten who I was. They had forgotten what I was capable of. They had forgotten whose name was carved in stone above the very entrance of the building I was lying in. Have you ever felt truly betrayed by the very people you sacrificed everything for? Have you ever given your whole heart to someone, only to have them throw it back in your face when you needed them most? Please, share your stories in the comments below, so we can all know that we are not alone in our struggles. For a long moment, I just stared at the dark screen of my phone. The hot, stinging tears had dried on my cheeks. The profound, heart-wrenching sorrow of the last few minutes began to recede, and in its place, something new and cold began to uncurl in my chest. It was an anger so pure and so sharp it felt like a shard of ice. Useless. Freeloader. Chloe's words echoed again, but this time they didn't sound like an insult. They sounded like a declaration of war. How dare she? How dare she, a woman who had contributed nothing, who had lived off my generosity and my son's apathy, use that word against me? Me, Evelyn Hayes, the woman who had built an empire from scratch with her husband. The woman who signed the paychecks for the very hospital I was lying in, for the very doctors and nurses who were currently keeping me alive. The weakness, the despair, the identity of the frail old woman I had allowed myself to become simply evaporated. The woman who was left was the one who had negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts, the one who had stared down skeptical bankers, the one who had held her dying husband's hand and promised to protect his legacy. I looked at my own hands, resting on the thin hospital blanket. They were wrinkled, yes, they were spotted with age. But these were not the hands of a freeloader. These were the hands that had laid the cornerstone for the first clinic. These were the hands that had signed the diplomas of every graduating class from the Hayes Medical School. And these were the hands that were about to bring Chloe's entire parasitic world crashing down around her. My spine straightened against the flimsy pillow. The fog of medication and misery cleared from my mind, replaced by a crystalline cold clarity. I pressed the red call button on the bedside remote. A young nurse hurried in, her face a mask of professional concern. "Yes, Mrs. Hayes, are you in pain? Do you need anything?" I looked at her, and for the first time in 5 years I let my true voice be heard. It was not the voice of the meek, apologetic mother-in-law. It was the voice of the chairwoman. "I need you to do something for me, dear," I said, my tone low, calm, and absolute. "I need you to get Dr. James Roberts, the chief of medicine. Not his assistant, not a resident. I need him. Tell him Chairwoman Hayes needs to see him immediately." The nurse's eyes widened. She stared at me, her mouth parting slightly. I could see the wheels turning. Hayes. The name was on the wall in the lobby, carved in granite. She clearly thought I was delirious, a poor old woman confused by her surroundings. "Ma'am, Dr. Roberts is a very busy." "Young lady?" I interrupted, my voice dropping another degree. "I am not confused. I am the chairwoman of the board of this hospital. Now, you can either make that call or you can spend the rest of your shift explaining to Dr. Roberts why you refused a direct order from me. The choice is yours." The color drained from her face. She fumbled for her security badge, swiped it on the room's computer, and I saw her eyes dart to my patient file. She was checking my full name. Her head snapped back up, her expression now one of pure, unadulterated panic. "Yes, Madam Chairwoman. Right away, Madam Chairwoman. I'm so sorry." She practically ran from the room. I permitted myself a small, cold smile. The first domino had been pushed. Less than 2 minutes later, the door to my room burst open. It wasn't a gentle knock. It was the sound of a man in a hurry. Dr. James Roberts, my late husband's protege, and the man I had personally appointed to run this hospital, stood in the doorway, his face pale and his chest heaving. He was still in his surgical scrubs, a cap clutched in his hand. "Evelyn," he breathed, rushing to my bedside. "My God, I just heard. I saw your name on the intake. I thought it was a different Hayes. Why are you in a public ward? Why didn't anyone call me?" "It's been an illuminating experience, James," I said, motioning for him to close the door. "I'm fine. A minor event. But I'm afraid I have a rather serious problem that requires your discretion." "Anything," he said, pulling a stool over, his face etched with concern. "What is it?" I didn't say anything. I simply unlocked my phone and handed it to him, the message from Chloe still on the screen. I watched him read it. James was a calm man. As a heart surgeon, he'd seen everything. But I saw the blood drain from his face, replaced by a sudden, dark flush of anger. His grip on the phone tightened. Who is this?" "My daughter-in-law, Chloe," I said simply. "The wife of my son, Mark. They have been living in my home for 5 years. Living in your... Evelyn, this is monstrous." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a protective fury I hadn't seen since Richard was alive. "What do you want me to do?" "First," I said, "I need information. I have been out of the loop. My son, Mark, he's on the company payroll, is he not?" James nodded, his expression grim. He pulled out a secure hospital tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. "Yes, you set up a marketing consultant position for him 5 years ago after his business failed. The salary is $150,000 a year." "Has he," I asked, "done any actual consulting?" James was silent for a moment as he scanned the file. "His login credentials haven't been used in 8 months. His last report was a 2-sentence email forwarded from a competitor's newsletter." "From what I can see, Evelyn, no. He is, for all intents and purposes, a no-show employee." I nodded. The sickness in my stomach was no longer from the heart attack. It was from the shame. "And his benefits? His wife?" James's jaw tightened. "Because of his executive-level position, he and his spouse are on our premium, platinum-tier insurance plan. It covers everything, absolutely everything. No deductible, no copay." "Everything," I repeated. "James, I want you to look up Chloe Hayes's file. I have a suspicion. I want to know if she has any procedures scheduled." His eyes met mine. He understood immediately. He typed in her name. A file popped up. He read for a moment, and then he swore. A short, sharp word that was very unlike him. "Evelyn, God, she's scheduled for next Tuesday. A full cosmetic package with Dr. Feldman. Facelift, breast augmentation, and liposuction." He paused, his disgust palpable. "The total cost to the insurance plan, your company, is over $85,000. There it was, the full, grotesque picture. I was a useless freeloader, lying in a standard room after a heart attack, while my daughter-in-law was preparing to use my company's money to get a brand new body, all while plotting to sell my home from under me. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it was almost impressive. The last ember of pity, of familial obligation, turned to ash. As I sat there, looking at the $85,000 bill for her vanity, funded by my life's work, the last shred of pity in my heart vanished. When you discovered the full, shocking truth of their betrayal, what would your very first move be? Let me know in the comments what your first instinct would be. I looked at James. He was vibrating with rage on my behalf. "Evelyn, say the word. I'll have security." "No," I said, holding up a hand. The plan was forming in my mind, clear and perfect like a diamond, a hard, sharp, beautiful diamond. "No security, not yet. This will be handled, but it will be handled my way. I need you to follow these instructions to the letter. No deviations. Do you understand?" He nodded, all business. "Your orders, Madam Chairwoman." "Good. Step 1. Mark's employment. I want you to call HR right now. Terminate his position, effective immediately. The reason is job abandonment and fraud. I want a formal letter sent to his email within the hour." "Done," James said, already typing into his tablet. Step 2. The insurance. The moment his employment is terminated, his health benefits are to be canceled. I want that cancellation effective as of 1 hour ago. There will be no grace period. Consider it done, James replied, his face grim. Step 3. The surgery. I want you to personally call Dr. Feldman's office. Inform them that patient Chloe Hayes' insurance is no longer valid. Her surgery for next Tuesday is to be canceled immediately. If she wishes to proceed, she will be required to provide the full $85,000 via certified check, 48 hours in advance. A slow smile spread across James's face. With pleasure. Step 4. My hospital bill. You were wondering why I'm in this ward. It's because this is where they brought me. I want a full itemized bill for my stay. And, I mean, full. The rack rate. No insurance, no employee discounts, no professional courtesy. I want every aspirin, every blood test, every second that heart monitor has been beeping, billed at the highest possible price. I want that bill finalized and sent to Mark Hayes' email address, right after the termination letter, with a demand for immediate payment. James's smile widened. I think I can have that prepared in under 20 minutes. What else? Step 5, I said, leaning back against the pillows. The lawyers. Get Mr. Harrison, my personal attorney, on the phone. And get the head of the hospital's legal department. I want them both here. In this room, in 30 minutes. Harrison is to begin eviction proceedings immediately. Our legal team is to begin exploring criminal charges for insurance fraud. They'll be here, James confirmed. And finally, James, step 6. The trap. I looked him in the eye. They will come here. As soon as they get those emails, they will come. They won't be polite. They will be furious, loud, and accusatory. When they arrive at the front desk, and they will, I don't want security to stop them. I want you to be paged, and I want you to personally escort them up to this room. Do you understand? James hesitated for the first time. Evelyn, are you sure? The stress, your heart. James, I said, and my voice was softer now, but with a core of steel. For 5 years, I have been dying a slow death from stress. The stress of being silent, of being invisible, of being disrespected. This, I said, motioning around the room, this is the cure. I have never felt more alive. Now please, get our lawyers, and then send those emails. I want to be ready when my guests arrive. James looked at me for a long moment, and the worry in his eyes was replaced with a deep, profound respect. Yes, ma'am, he said. He stood, walked to the door, and paused. It is good to have you back, Chairwoman Hayes. He closed the door behind him, and I was alone again in the quiet room. But it was no longer a cold, sterile prison. It was a war room, and I was no longer a victim. I was a general, waiting for the battle to begin. The 30 minutes after James left were the calmest I had felt in 5 years. The faint, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was no longer a sound of sickness, but a countdown clock. Mr. Harrison, my personal attorney, and Mr. Davies, the head of the hospital's legal department, arrived looking grim and carrying briefcases. They were efficient, professional, and utterly appalled. Papers were signed, strategies confirmed. Mr. Harrison had already dispatched a courier to my house to serve the official 24-hour eviction notice. Are you sure you want to be present for this, Evelyn? Harrison asked, his voice gentle. We can handle it from here. I am sure, Alan, I replied, adjusting the silk robe James had procured for me. I have been silent for far too long. I will be present for the final act. I was no longer in the hospital bed. I was seated in the armchair by the window, the one that caught the afternoon light. Dr. Roberts stood respectfully to my right, and my 2 lawyers stood to my left. We were a formidable reception committee. We didn't have to wait long. The first sign of their arrival was not a knock, but a commotion down the hall. A loud, shrill, indignant voice, followed by my son's frantic muttering. The door to my room didn't open. It was slammed open, crashing against the wall stopper. Chloe stood in the doorway, her face a mask of purple rage. Her expensive handbag was clutched in her white-knuckled fist, and her eyes were wild. Mark cowered behind her, his face pale and slick with sweat, clutching his phone as if it were a life raft. What is the meaning of this? Chloe shrieked, storming into the room. She didn't even look at me properly, too consumed by her own fury. What kind of backwards, broke-ass hospital is this? You canceled my surgery. You sent us this bill. It's insane. And you got Mark fired. She finally turned her full attention to me, her eyes narrow into slits. This is your fault, isn't it? You senile old woman. Did you say something stupid to the billing department? Did you cost your own son his job? God, you are useless. You can't even be sick without ruining our lives. Mark, seeing the other men in the room, finally spoke, his voice a desperate whine. Chloe, please, keep your voice down. Mom, what's going on? They said fraud, and this bill, it has to be a mistake. It's for $60,000. We can't pay this. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment, letting their accusations and panic echo off the walls. I looked at Chloe, at her designer shoes tapping impatiently on the linoleum floor. I looked at my son, a man in his 40s, cowering behind his wife like a child, and I felt nothing. No pity, no lingering affection, only a cold, clean sense of finality. I took a slow, deliberate sip of the tea James had brought me. My surgery, I repeated, my voice quiet, but carrying in the suddenly silent room. My bill. My son's job. You seem to be under a lot of stress, Chloe. You're damn right I am, she spat. You are going to fix this. You are going to call whoever you need to call and tell them this is all a mistake. Tell them your son is a valuable employee. And you're going to get my surgery back on the schedule. Or so help me, I will sue this entire hospital. I smiled. It was a thin, humorless expression. Sue my hospital? I asked, my voice still soft.
Chloe let out a sharp, barking laugh. Oh, your hospital now? Is it? Did you forget to take your medication? You don't own a damn thing. You are a freeloader. A parasite. You are living in my house, eating my food. That's enough. The voice that cut through her tirade was not mine. It was Dr. Roberts. He had been standing silently, but now he took one step forward, and the full authority of the chief of medicine radiated from him. Chloe stopped, mid-rant, surprised by his intervention. Ma'am, he said, addressing Chloe with a voice that was pure ice. You will lower your voice. You will cease your threats, and you will show some respect. You are not speaking to a patient. Chloe scoffed, looking him up and down. And who the hell are you, her doctor? I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to her. My name, he said, his voice dangerously low, is Dr. James Roberts, chief of medicine of this hospital. And the woman you are addressing, the woman you just called a parasite, is Mrs. Evelyn Hayes. She is the chairwoman of the board of directors and the sole owner of the entire Hayes hospital system. This is, in fact, her hospital. You are here at her discretion. The silence that followed was absolute. It was so complete I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner kicking in. I watched Chloe's face. It was a fascinating, terrible thing to observe. It was like watching a statue crack in fast motion. The furious, self-righteous rage didn't just fade, it shattered. Her jaw went slack. The blood drained from her face, leaving her makeup standing out in garish patches against her waxy, pale skin. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, darted from Dr. Roberts to me, to the lawyers, and back to me. What did you say? She whispered. He said, I spoke, finally rising from my chair, that you are a guest here, Chloe, and your visiting hours are over. No, she stammered, shaking her head, a frantic, jerky motion. No, that's a lie. You're lying. She's just an old woman. She's poor. She is the wealthiest woman in this state, Mr. Harrison, my lawyer, interjected, stepping forward with his briefcase. His voice was dry and precise. And I am Alan Harrison, Mrs. Hayes's personal attorney. I'm afraid everything Dr. Roberts has said is the simple, verifiable truth. Mark, Chloe shrieked, whipping around to her husband. Mark, tell them she's nobody. Tell them. Mark was staring at me, his face a mask of dawning, abject horror. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. Mom? He whispered. Mom? Is it true? The hospital. I just looked at him. I gave him no answer. I owed him nothing. Mr. Mark Hayes, Mr. Davies, the hospital's lawyer, spoke up. He opened a file. I represent the hospital's legal department. As of 2:15 p.m. today, your employment was terminated for cause, specifically, job abandonment, and the fraudulent collection of a salary for services not rendered. We have records indicating you have not accessed your company email or logged into the server in 244 days. The hospital is reserving the right to file a civil suit to reclaim those wages, which total, he glanced at a paper, $325,000 over the last 2 years. Mark made a small, choking sound and slid down the wall, slumping into a sitting position on the floor, his head in his hands. Chloe's gaze snapped back to me, the shock now curdling into pure, desperate panic. Wait, Evelyn, Mom, please, it was a joke, the text message, it was a misunderstanding. I was just stressed, you know how I get. She took a step toward me, her hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. The surgery, I can cancel it, it's fine. And the house. We love having you at the house. You know that. The house, Mr. Harrison said, his voice sharp. He pulled a document from his briefcase. You mean, Mrs. Hayes's house. I'm afraid your residency there has been terminated. A process server delivered this eviction notice to the property 30 minutes ago. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises with your personal belongings. Any items left after that time will be considered forfeit. 24 hours? Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking. We can't. Where will we go? We have nowhere to go. That sounds like a personal problem, I said, my voice as cold as the ice that had been in my chest. You seem to have no trouble telling me to find another place to live just a few hours ago. I am simply returning the sentiment. And the hospital bill? Mark croaked from the floor. Mom, please, $60,000. We don't have it. Please, Mom, you can just write it off, can't you? I looked down at my son, the last, final thread of my maternal instinct, the one that had survived years of neglect and disrespect, finally snapped. Write it off? I said. No, Mark, I don't think I will. That bill is valid. You see, the platinum tier insurance you and your wife were enjoying was a benefit tied to your employment, an employment you just lost, and since your benefits were cancelled before my admittance to this hospital, you are, as my next of kin, personally responsible for the full cost of my care. I walked over to the door and held it open. But, my surgery. Chloe whispered, tears of rage and self-pity now streaming down her face, ruining her expensive mascara. Your elective, $85,000 cosmetic surgery? I asked. It has been cancelled. Your insurance is gone. Your husband's job is gone. Your home is gone. You called me a useless freeloader. But it seems to me, Chloe, that you were the one freeloading. You were living in my house, driving a car paid for by my company, and preparing to have your vanity paid for by my hospital, all while treating me, your benefactor, like dirt. I looked from her sobbing, contorted face to my son, who was rocking back and forth on the floor, muttering, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." Now, I said, my voice ringing with finality, get out of my hospital. They stumbled out, Chloe half pushing, half dragging Mark, who seemed unable to walk on his own. She was screaming at him, "You knew! You must have known! You idiot! You ruined us!" Their voices, filled with bile and accusations, echoed down the hallway until they were finally gone. Dr. Roberts closed the door, and the room was blissfully silent once more, broken only by the steady, calm beep of the heart monitor. I stood for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt empty. But it was a good emptiness. It was the clean, quiet emptiness of a house after a storm has passed, after the trash has been taken out. Watching them break down, reduced to nothing by the truth, I felt a cold, clear sense of justice. They had built their entire lives on a foundation of my kindness, all while chipping away at it with their disrespect. Now the foundation was gone. In your opinion, was the complete and total ruin they faced a fitting end for their actions? Or was it too much? I'm truly interested to know what you think justice looks like in a case like this. The silence that filled the room after they left was profound. It was a cleansing void. Mr. Harrison and Mr. Davies quietly gathered their papers, gave me respectful, sympathetic nods, and left me with Dr. Roberts. He checked my heart monitor. The beeping was steady, calm, and strong. "Your heart rate didn't even spike, Evelyn," he said, a note of awe in his voice. "I think this was the best medicine we could have given you." I smiled, and for the first time it reached my eyes. "I agree, James. Thank you. I believe I'll be ready for my discharge tomorrow." The aftermath for Chloe and Mark, as I learned later, was not as peaceful. Their downfall was as swift and total as it was deserved. They left the hospital not as a couple, but as two bitter enemies chained together. Their argument, which began in my room, reportedly escalated into a screaming match in the parking garage, each blaming the other for their spectacular ruin. Chloe, realizing her platinum card life was over, unleashed a torrent of abuse on Mark, calling him a weak, stupid fool for not handling his mother and for not knowing about her wealth. Mark, finally broken, apparently just wept. They drove back to my house, their house in their minds, only to find the legal notice of eviction taped to the front door. The 24-hour deadline sent them into a new spiral of panic. They had no money to hire movers and nowhere to move to. Their frantic calls to friends, the same friends they had hosted for expensive dinner parties, were met with cold shoulders and sudden excuses. Word of Mark's firing for fraud had already begun to circulate. The next day, exactly 24 hours later, a security team hired by Mr. Harrison arrived to oversee their removal. They were allowed to take only their personal effects. The furniture, the appliances, the 80-inch television, all of it had been purchased with my son's fraudulent salary, and Mr. Harrison had already placed a lien on all assets in the house as partial repayment for the $325,000 lawsuit the hospital had filed against Mark. They left with a few suitcases, standing on the curb of the beautiful street they once dominated, while their neighbors watched from behind drawn curtains. They were homeless. But their troubles were just beginning. The $60,000 hospital bill for my stay went to collections. With no job and a pending lawsuit, their credit was obliterated. Bankruptcy was their only option, but even that couldn't save them from their personal judgment. Chloe, who had built her entire identity on being the wife of a successful man, could not handle the fall from grace. Within a month, she left Mark. She cleaned out what little was left in their joint checking account and disappeared, rumored to have moved back in with her parents in another state, her grand ambitions of facelifts and luxury reduced to an old bedroom in a suburban tract home. And Mark, my son, he was left with nothing. No wife, no job, no home, no family. He was a pariah in the business community, and the Hayes name, which he had once coasted on, was now a mark of his shame. He had made his choice. He had stood by and watched his wife abuse his mother, all for a life of comfort. He had traded his blood for money, and in the end, he was left with neither. As for me, I did not return to that house. The memories were too tainted, the very air thick with their greed and my years of silence. When I was discharged from the hospital, a private car, one from the company's executive fleet, was waiting for me. It did not take me back to the suburbs. It took me to the city, to the top-floor penthouse apartment that Richard and I had kept for all those years, a place I hadn't visited since he passed. I walked in, and it was as if he was still there. The air was clean, the views stretched for miles, and the silence was one of peace, not oppression. The next Monday, I didn't wake up to scrub floors. I woke up, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, and was driven to the Hayes Hospital System headquarters. When I walked into the boardroom, the entire board stood up. I took my rightful place at the head of the table. "Good morning, gentlemen," I said. "There are going to be some changes." My life began anew. I re-immersed myself in the work I had once loved, the work of healing, of building. But my personal experience had given me a new, sharp focus. I officially sold the house, the one Mark and Chloe had been kicked out of. Every last cent from the sale was used to create a new branch of our foundation, the Hayes Foundation for Elder Dignity. Its sole purpose was to provide free legal services and safe, immediate housing for seniors who were being financially or emotionally abused by their own families. My pain became my purpose. I found a new joy in life. I wasn't the useless old woman hiding in the shadows. I was Chairwoman Hayes, a philanthropist, a leader. I traveled. I funded new research wings. I mentored young doctors. I had finally, at 72, reclaimed my life, my name, and my power. This whole ordeal taught me a devastating but vital lesson. I had spent so long believing that money was a corrupting force, something to be hidden, that I had allowed myself to be corrupted by the absence of it. I had let them make me small, believing my simplicity was a virtue. In the end, what do you think truly defines a person's worth? Is it the money they have, the family they raise, or the self-respect they refuse to surrender? I'd be interested to read your thoughts on that. I still think about Mark sometimes, a fleeting sadness for the boy he once was. But I have no regrets. The wolf in sheep's clothing, Chloe, had shown her teeth, and in doing so, she had been caught in a trap of her own making. They both paid the price for their cruelty. And I learned the most important lesson of all. Your kindness should never be a license for someone else's disrespect. You can be a good person, a loving mother, a gentle soul, but you must never, ever, be a doormat. Thank you for listening to my story. If these life lessons resonate with you, and if you believe in the power of standing up for yourself, please subscribe and join our community at Channel. We are a place where we share our stories, learn from each other, and grow stronger every single day.